What's going on, guys? John Elder here from codemy.com, and in this video, we're going to create a deck of cards with PyQt5 and Python. All right, guys, like I said, in this video, we're going to create and shuffle out a deck of cards. But before we get started, if you like this video and want to see more like it, be sure to smash the like button below, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, and check out codemy.com, where I have dozens of courses with thousands of videos that teach you to code. Use coupon code YouTube50 to get 50% off memberships, all my courses, videos, and books for a one-time fee, which is insanely cheap. All right, I did this a couple days ago with Kinter. Figured we'd do it with PyQt5 because it's a little bit different, slightly similar, but you might not watch that video anyway. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So we've got a deck of cards here. I can deal out two cards. We've got a card for a dealer and a card for a player. A very basic setup here, but this is going to allow us to create a deck of cards, shuffle them, give each player a card, the dealer and the player. And once we have that foundation, it'll be very easy to expand this into basically any kind of card game you want. Instead of shuffling out two cards, you could shuffle out 4 cards for blackjack, or 10 cards or 5 cards or whatever for poker, anything you want. Once we have this sort of basic setup created, it's really going to be easy to expand it from there. So that's what we're going to do in this video. In the next few videos, we'll probably expand it into different types of games and things. But for now, we're just going to get this basic setup going. So let's head over to our code. I'm using the Sublime Text Editor and the Git Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the playlist with all the other PyQt5 videos in this series. So check that out if you haven't so far. So I've got our basic PyQt5 starter code that we've always got. I'm calling it deck.py. And the first thing we need to do is build out our GUI. So we're going to use the designer for that. So let's head over to our terminal. I'm in my C PyQt5 directory. I've got my virtual environment turned on, and let's just run the designer. And we want to create a main window. There we go. Now I've already kind of played around with this. So I'm just going to come down here and change the height and width of this manually. So I want to make this 600 by 400. And if we right click, let's change the color of this. So let's click on change style sheet. And when we do this pops up, we can click on here and change the background to some sort of green. I don't know. We apply, I don't really like that green. So I'm just gonna kind of change this to green like that. All right, I like that green better. There we go. And so what we're gonna do here is add a couple of labels and a couple of buttons. And we're going to use the labels to add images, obviously, and the buttons will be buttons as they always are. So let's come over here and we can just grab a couple of buttons. And you'll notice right away that these are green because we made the background green. So I'm just going to change these back real quick. Change the style sheet, add a color here, background, pick anything we want. Let's see, let's change this to light gray, something like that. I think that's the system default. So let me just copy this and do the same thing for this push button here. Okay, and now we can come down here and find a label. And we need 2 of these. So there's one and there's the other. And if I click on here, I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna call this one the dealer label. And I'll call the other one the player label. Okay. And now I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change the size and width. I've already mapped this out already. So instead of trying to manually move these around and make it all look nice, I'm just going to punch in the numbers that I already like. So I'm going to come down here to geometry. And this first guy is going to be 125. The Y will be 20. The width will be 150 and the height will be 218. There we go. For this second label, I'm going to do the same thing. This X is going to be 325. The Y will be 20. The width will be, again, 150. And the height will be 218. I know those are the size of the cards that I want, right? And we can do the same thing for the push button. I already sort of know where I want these buttons to go. So I want this one to say shuffle, start/over. And I want this one to say deal cards. And this guy, we could change the X and the Y and all that for this as well. We want 125 by 290. We want the width to be 150 and the height to be 40. And same thing with this guy. Let's change the X for him to 325, the Y to 290, and the width to 150, and the height to 40. Okay, so we've got our basic layout here. Now, these two guys, we need actual cards here. We need images. And if I pull up an Explorer real quick, this is my C PyQt5 directory. And inside of here, I've got a directory called images. And inside of there, I've created another directory called cards. And this is just a bunch of cards that I have. And I downloaded these for free somewhere on the internet. It doesn't matter what cards you use, but you'll notice how I've named them 2_of_clubs, 2_of_diamonds. So that's going to come into play later on when we have to call them. So just sort of keep that in mind in the back of your head. We'll come back to that later. So, you know, you can download these from my GitHub account if you want, or just find any cards at all. It really doesn't matter. But the thing about this is each of these are very big. So we're going to have to resize them, but we're not going to do it programmatically. We can do it straight in the designer. So that'll save us some time. With Kinter, we had to actually manually resize those with PIL, the Python image library, which is a hassle. You know, not a big deal, but for here, we don't have to do that. So these are the images I'm going to use. So let's set those up. So I'm going to click on this first one here, and we could scroll down here to PixMap, and there it is. And if we click on this, we can click on the little arrow next to it, and we can choose a file. So I'm going to go in my PyQt5 directory, click on images, click on cards, and then just pick a card. It doesn't matter anyone. And you'll notice this is gigantic. You can't even see it. It's just white. So we need to click this little scaled contents box. Boom. When we do that, it resizes itself. So awesome. And here, do the same thing. And it doesn't matter which of these we choose because whenever we shuffle the deck, it's going to change them automatically anyway. So we just want something there so that we can have something in our UI file that we can change later on easier, right? So, okay, that looks good there and we're good to go. Now, I'm going to actually pop these down a little bit. And then let's create another label up here that says dealer. And let's come back up here and change the XY stuff of it. This is going to be 125 and 10 is fine there. So let's also come over to our label, pull another one. Let's call this guy player. And again, I want this to be, let's see, the X for here. Put this at 325. So it lines up with this card, whatever. Or maybe we want to put it at the end. So that would be what? 475? Oh, that's way too high. Let's go 375. Nope. I don't know. We'll just drag it. Let's go 440 maybe. Nope. 450. So it sort of lines up. I don't know. I'm just playing at this point. Good enough. So, okay. So let's go ahead and save this. Go up to File, Save As. And I want to save this in my PyQt5 directory. And I'm just going to call this deck. Okay. And if we want, we can hit Form Preview just to see. Okay, that looks good enough. Okay, so let's head back over to our code. And let's open that file. So File Open, deck.ui. And the first thing we always have to do is import our stuff. So we've got a QPush button, so we need to import that. So let's come up here. Boom. And then we also have QLabel. Got a bunch of those. Okay, so that looks good. Now we need to come down here and define our widgets. So let's go self.label. And we'll change the names of these in a bit. So this is going to be self.findChild. And this is going to be a QLabel. And the name of this is something. Now we've got 4 of these, so I'm just gonna 2, 3, 4. We've also got 2 buttons. So this is a button. And we'll change the names of these 2 in just a second. And this is QPush button and QPush button. Okay, so let's come through here. So we're gonna have a dealer label. We're gonna have a player label. And then let's call this one dealer header label. I don't know. And this one will be player header label, right? And the button, this will be the shuffle button. And the second one will be the deal button. Okay, so we need to find the names of all of these things. So our dealer label, let's come through here. And this first one is dealer label. So we can just copy this. And the next one is the player label. If we come down here, did we not change the name of that one? Head back over to our designer and look here. Dealer label. Oh, we just called it label 2. I'm going to change this to player label and label 1. I'll just call this one the D label or dealer label. And we'll call this one the P label. Okay. And let's come down here to the shuffle. I'm just going to call this one S push button. And we'll call this one D push button. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this again. So file save, and let's come over here to our code again and close this and open it again. So deck.ui. Okay, so now let's come down here. This will just make it easier to find these names here. So let's see, what are we looking at? We've got the dealer label. Now we want the player label. So we can just come through here and there's the dealer label. It might just be easier to grab these out of the designer, but we're already here, so we'll do it like this. So the dealer header label, that one was D label. And the player header label, that one was P label. We're not actually going to do anything with those labels, but we still have to import them because we might do something later. And our 2 buttons, let's see, those were up here at the top, I think. Yes, the S push button was the shuffle one. And the D push button was the dealer button. Okay, so that seemed more complicated than it needed to be. All right, let's do our click button, guys. So we've got 2 buttons, basically. This guy and this guy. So we want to go .clicked.connect, and then we want to call the self.shuffle function. And we haven't created that yet. And so down here it's clicked.connect, and this is going to be the self.deal or deal cards button function. Okay, so that looks good. Now let's come down here and create these guys. So I'm going to go define shuffle, pass in self, and here we want to pass. And then let's define deal cards, pass in self, and again pass. Or instead of passing, let's change the title of our app whenever we click it, just to see if this works. So let's go self.set window title, and then let's say shuffled. And then the same thing down here. We can say, for now, dealt. Okay, so let's save this and run it just to make sure this is working and looking all right. So let's head over here. Let's go Python deck.py. When we do, we get our app here. When we click this, it says shuffled up here. When we click this one, it says dealt. Okay, so far so good. All right, so now we need to create our virtual deck. So like I said when I was talking about this in the Kinter video, there's thousands of ways to do this. There are more elegant ways. I've seen ways you can do this with just a line or 2 of code. I'm going to be a little more explicit just so you can see the thought process behind it, how we're shuffling and taking these out of and creating lists out of them and stuff like that. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So first, let's define our deck. And we need to define what our suits are going to be. So a deck of cards has 4 suits. There are diamonds, there are clubs, there are hearts, and there are spades. And there's also values. And so we can create a range for this, range from 2 to 15, because we want our thing to start at 2. There is a 2 of hearts, a 2 of diamonds, a 2 of whatever. There is no 1 of anything, right? So it starts at 2 and it goes up to 14. That's why our range is between 2 and 14. So we say 15 here, right? So the 14th card is going to be the ace. So what I've done here for the face cards, you can see the 11 will be the jack, the 12 will be the queen, the 13 will be the king, and the 14 will be the ace, right? So, okay, we've got our suits, we've got our values. Now let's create a deck. So I'm going to create a global deck. And here, let's just create an empty Python list, right? Okay, so now let's add our cards into the deck. So let's go for suit in suits. And then inside of that, So for each of these, we want to loop through here. And for each of these, we want to spit out 14 cards, right? So to do that, we loop again. So for value in values, we want to deck.append. This is how you append onto lists, right? And I'm going to create an F string. And inside of here, I'm going to go value underscore of underscore suit. So this will print out like the 3 of hearts. And you remember our cards are named that way. So here's 10 underscore of underscore diamonds, 10 underscore of underscore hearts. So that would be 10 underscore of underscore hearts or whatever. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because that's what our cards are named. When we have this in our deck, I can then just call that thing and it will show that image because they have the same names, right? So if we want to, we could, let's see, print the deck. We could also print the length of the deck just to make sure there's 52 cards being created here. So let's save this and run it, see if that worked. So let me clear the screen first. So when we click shuffle, and then close this, boom, we see here is our deck. And you see, sure enough, there are 52 cards. And you'll notice 2 of diamonds, 3 of diamonds, 4 of diamonds, all the way down to the next thing, 2 of clubs, 3 of clubs, 4 of clubs, down to the next thing, 4 of hearts, 5 of hearts, 6 of hearts, down to the next thing, spades, spades, spades. Each of them has between 2 and 14. So, okay, so far so good. So now we've got our deck, we need to randomize it and pull out random cards when we shuffle. So let's come up here and let's import random. This is just the Python random library. It allows us to do all kinds of cool random stuff. And we can get rid of these print things. We don't need to do that. So now let's create our players. And we'll use this to keep track of what cards have been dealt to each player, right? So I'm going to create a global variable for the dealer and the player. And we'll create lists for each one. So the dealer will have its own list and the player will have its own list. And they're just empty for now. So now we want to grab a random card for the dealer. And I'm going to call this card. And this is going to be card equal random dot choice. And we're pulling this from the deck, right? So when we do this, this will randomly select a card from our deck of cards, right? So once we've done that, we want to remove that card from the deck, because once a card has been pulled from the deck, we don't want to be able to have it again in the deck. We've taken it out of the deck, right? So we need to actually take it out of the deck. And we can do that just with deck.remove and then pass in that card. So the remove function will pull something out of a Python list, right? Well, this Python list, I guess, right? So we're going to remove that card. We also want to now add that card to dealer's list. So we need to make sure, hey, that's the dealer's card. He's pulled that out. So we can just call dealer.append and then card. This will add that to the dealer list, right? Okay, so now finally we want to output card to screen. Now remember, when we created these guys, we used PixMaps down here, the PixMap. So we need to update that PixMap programmatically. And in order to do that, we need to import PixMap up at the top here. So let's come up here and let's go from PyQt5 Qt GUI. We want to import QPixmap. So that will allow us to do PixMap-y type things down here. So let's do that. So let's create a PixMap. And I'm just going to create a variable called PixMap, and that's going to be a QPixmap. And we're going to set that equal to, let's create an F string. And remember, we saved this in our images directory /cards directory. And then the card that we've selected from the deck, well, that's card. And these are PNG files, so I can go .png. Now, this file is in our C GUI directory, so we can use a relative path here. If it wasn't, or if your images were in some other directory, you would specify it here. So you could say, you know, PyQt5/images, or if you had it in my images or something, you would put it like that. But we don't have to do that because these are all in the same directory, so we can use the relative path. So, okay, we've defined our PixMap. Now we just need to update our label. So this was the dealer label. What do we call this? Let's make sure here. Dealer label. There we go. So self.dealer label dot set PixMap. And then we just pass in that PixMap that we defined right there. Okay, so let's save this and run it. Make sure that works because we're just going to copy and paste this code the next time for the player. So we could come over here, we click shuffle, boom, it says 10 there. We do it again, 2. Every time we shuffle, we get a different card. Okay, very cool. So now we just need to do the same thing for our player. We can just copy and paste all this stuff. So I'm just going to grab all this and paste it in. So instead of dealer, this is for the player. So card random choice, card remove it, append it to our player. And then we want to change the player label. Okay, so now this says shuffled. Instead of it saying shuffled, let's put an output of how many cards are left in the deck. And we know how to do this, so we can use an F string. And we can call the length of the deck. And then here we could say cards left in deck. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this and run it. Make sure that looks okay and that works. So right off the bat, we can click shuffle and there's 50 cards left because there's 52 cards to begin with and we just shuffled out these 2 cards. So there's 50 left. Oh, I misspelled in. 50 cards, 50 card left if deck. Oh, that's great. All right, so maybe we want to 50 cards left in deck. Okay, so that's pretty simple. But now we want this shuffle function to just run whenever the program starts, instead of having to actually click the button when the program starts. We want the button there so that we can restart it later on if we want. But when the program runs initially, we want that shuffle function to run right away. So let's just come up here to, say, by our buttons here. Let's just say shuffle cards, and then we can just call self.shuffle. That should work. Let's run this guy just to make sure. Okay, 5 and 8 instead of the 2 and the 2. I didn't have to click the button. We can still click the button, but okay. So now we want to deal with this deal cards button. So every time we click this, we want to deal out 2 more cards. So pretty simple. We can just mostly copy and paste this stuff. So I'm just gonna, let's see, this stuff. So we've got this and this. Let's also do our title thing too. And let's just come down here, get rid of this. Now I want to put this in a try except block because once we've shuffled out all the cards, our Python list will be empty. And if we then try and deal out more cards from an empty list, we're going to get an error. I think it's an index out of range error. So instead of, throwing up an error and flummoxing the whole thing, we're just going to use this try except loop. And here we could say self.set window title. And we could just say like game over or something, right? Otherwise, I'm just going to paste in all of this code that we have already done. And, I think that will do it. I don't think we really need to change anything. So let's save this and run it just to make sure. Line 102. What did we do? This needs to be tabbed over. All right. So let's say update title bar. And do we need to do the same thing up here in our shuffle function? Yeah, let's comment this guy as well. Okay, so let's save this and run it. Should work now. Okay, so there's 50 cards left in the deck. If we deal again, now there's 48, 46, 44, 42, 40, just keep going, 20, 18, 6, 4, there's 2 left. Now there's 0 left. If I try and click this again, Oh, I misspelled set. Oh, that's a good one. All the errors today. So set window title. All right, that should work. Now, that's why we run these things. Okay, so let's deal through these. Boom, 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 boom. 20, 18, 6, 4, 2, 0. Now we hit it again. Our list should be empty. There's no cards left, and it just says game over up here. So that's what we want. Now you may want to have a box pop up that says game over. You may want to remove these last 2 cards. Anything you want to do at the end, you would just put it in that except block right here, and that'll do the trick. So, okay, pretty simple. We flew through that very quickly, but I think you could probably see the power of this. We've now created a deck of cards, and we're only dealing out 2 cards, but how hard would it be to deal out 4 cards instead, 2 for the dealer and 2 for the player. All of a sudden you've got blackjack, right? So it's just a matter of changing some variables around and, adding a couple more images to this thing. That'd be pretty easy. So we'll probably do that in the next few videos, play around with these, make actual games out of this. As it is now, we can start over and shuffle out all the cards, and we can start over anytime we want, but that's not that fun, right? There's no actual logic in here. There's no game being played. We're just shuffling out the cards, but all card games require shuffling out the cards. So like I said, this is a great foundation to build from here into any card game you want. So like I said, we'll work on that in the next few videos, but pretty cool. So that's all for this video. If you liked it, be sure to smash the like button below, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, and check out codemy.com where you can use coupon code YouTube50 to get 50% off membership. So it's access to all my courses, over 47 courses, thousands of videos, and the PDFs of all my best-selling coding books. Join over 150,000 students learn to code just like you. My name is John Elder from codemy.com, and I'll see you in the next video.